So good morning, everyone. I have the distinct pleasure and honor of being with these esteemed panelists on stage today to celebrate 50 plus years of the Black Student Coalition here at Davidson College. I'm so glad that you're here, and I want to say thank you to all the alums, students, guests, staff members, faculty, staff, local community, and everyone for being a part of this celebration today. Prior to COVID, the committee began getting together a group of people, a list of agendas, as well as trying to figure out how do we celebrate this large milestone. And here to help us are these panelists today. They will tell us about how the BSC came to its creation, how we are here today, as well as all the many steps that we've taken to make our mark here at Davidson College campus. So I will explain the format now. We will begin with a set of questions, probably for about an hour, and then we'll have like a 30-minute Q&A session at the end. And we will begin soon, or right now, actually. So who am I? My name is Dara Ferguson. I'm class of 2017. I was student body president here at Davidson College. I was part of the Upsilon Mu chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I was also BSC historian, but for me, most notably about my experience here is when I was student body president, I worked with my friend and my line sister, Jada Wilgleton Little, who was also BSC president at my time, to rename the Student Government Association office after Anthony Fox. And so that was a big milestone for me, and that was something that I appreciated doing and also recognizing a Black alum here on this campus. So I would like everyone to kind of also do something similar to what I did, introduce your name, your class year, and something notable about your time here at Davidson. I would like you to begin. Right? Of course.
Okay. You can't turn this around for it to make it as 76. I was a prodigy when I got here. I was probably like 2 or 3 years old. I really can't believe it was 50 years. 76. Use the microphone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, well, I just came off a ship. I'm a commanding officer. I'm usually yelling at people. Okay, so. But 50 years is a long time, a lot longer than what I thought, and it goes by really quick, okay? We got here, and that was Patterson, Wendell, okay? They've called me anything, and you can do the same, all right? Except say sir, okay? Look, 33 years in the United States Navy. I left Davidson in 1976, not knowing what I wanted to do, and went into the Navy, and didn't find out what I wanted to do until I finally became commanding officer of a vessel and a lot of people, and then Davidson came back to mind. So in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been on campus here, probably more than I've been in the last 30 years, and I've seen a great deal of change. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. I have 2 sons that have 3 kids, and they're all in college, Marshall University, and they all expect me to pay. They're going to be in for a rude surprise. And I'm glad that I'm just not the only one here from the class of 76. There are 2 or 3 others here, and those are at 77 and that kind of thing. So we'll talk a little bit more about what it was like back then in the yonder years, and how it's similar to what it is still today, okay? So I welcome your questions, but I want to leave you with one thing before I say anything. I want to know a lot more about you than you know about me. I want to know what your experiences are. I want to know where you think you're headed, what you think that you see as is going on in campus today, and the needs for the day, and the good. Don't just talk about the bads, the ups, the downs, but the things that that really matter to you. I will leave you with this. I've traveled around the world, and there's one name that I've been able to count on, and it's Davidson. Whether I was in Afghanistan or Hawaii or Dubai, there was always somebody there that knew something about Davidson, and it helped me a great deal. So just take that in mind when you're asking your questions. It's very prestigious, it's very, very well respected, and there is value to it. And then we'll go from there.
Thank you so much. Now, you can do another introduction, your name, your class year, and like how you feel that your Davidson experience was here. Just kind of a brief statement, and then we'll go into questions after all the panelists have also introduced themselves as well.
Janet Stovall, class of 1985, mother of, okay, you gotta hold it that close. All right, Janet Stovall, class 1985, parent of a class of 2020 trustee member. The thing that I would say that I did here while I was here, I was also former president of the BSC, but the thing that I am most proud of was Project 87. And I wrote that when I was here, and I have loved to see what it is, the difference it has made on this campus.
No, ma'am, I don't have my own mic.
You got it.
Dana Lemon, class of 86. Excited to be here. And I think the thing that I remember most while I was here at Davidson was being adopted by people like Janet. In my freshman class, there were 2 black girls and 15 black guys. And so it was quite a struggle when I first got here. But people like Janet and Judy and Elaine adopted me, brought me into their little circle. They didn't let me wander aimlessly by myself around the campus. And 50 years later, we're still friends.
Oh.
Good morning. Sterling Freeman, class of 1992. Also, my partner, Michelle, is class of 1993, of 29 years, my partner of 29 years. And yeah, you can clap for that. That's good. Yeah, that's an accomplishment. That's an accomplishment. Yeah, and we still love each other deeply. And I had the good fortune of being an athlete here. I played basketball here at Davidson. I think the thing that really stands out for me, it's not one thing, but I am proud of, I think at the time, the leadership of the Black Student Coalition. People like Lindsey Mills and his friend at the time, now his partner, Michelle Serrano, and those folks who I believe sort of took the Black Student Coalition, at least in my time here, to another level as it related to attracting activities and speakers and opportunities to amplify the Black experience. That was helpful to me, and I'll say more about how that was helpful, but I'm proud of the work, the agitation that went into creating an arc that I think sent the Black Student Coalition to another level.
Hey, good morning, everybody. David Dennis, class of '08. I think that, well, you know, I was here, we did a little rebel rousing on campus a little bit, but I think the thing that I'm the most, well, I guess I love the most is Shades of Brown, like the stuff we did with Shades of Brown. Like, if you were here when we were here, like Shades of Brown was rocking on campus, and like we were killing it, and it was dope, and it was awesome. So that was the thing that I think was probably the coolest thing we did here. And the Fias back there, they were like the beginning of Shades of Brown before I got here, but we sort of like took it to where, you know, a cool place. So. Oh, sorry. Shades of Brown was a step team thing here. So we were performing all over the place. Like when I got here, I think it was sort of like in a hiatus sort of thing, and there was like all these a cappella groups, and I was like, we could do something that's like, you know, a cappella groups may still be here, but I was like, we could do something that's got a little seasoning on it. So I think we did that, and so it was a cool thing. So.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Aaron Goodson, class of 2011, and I like to say that I was able to come through Davidson in one of its golden eras. And so when I think about something that sticks out to me, particularly about the BSC and at Davidson at the time, is, we'll talk more about it later, but the fact that there were 3 of our 4 MPHC organizations that are currently on campus chartered while we were in school. And I think that was super significant, especially thinking about how the BSC was able to serve as a foundation and a uniting organization in the midst of what could have been division. So.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carol Jack Udell, and I'm a senior. I graduate this year. And I would have to say one of the most important moments for me for the BSC was before I even got here, I was a high school student visiting Davidson, and the way that the president at the time, Bree Reed, kind of just took me in as her child before I was even admitted to this institution was kind of just one of the most amazing moments for me. And I would say during my time here, I've been lucky enough to be on the e-board every year. I've been a student here, and I'm definitely doing Davidson Brown Skin Girls, where I highlighted Black women on campus, just kind of showcasing their beauty. Because if you don't know, I'm a big Beyonce fan. So just having a moment to show their beauty on campus and kind of just celebrating them was something that I'm really proud of, and I'm proud to see keep going in the future.
So thank you so much. Give our panelists a round of applause. So to understand, okay.
Yeah, we can't hear. So
You see me and David here going, what she say?
we're old.
Oh, well, you speak for yourself.
You old.
Uh-oh.
Please speak loud, 'cause we can't hear.
No, you're fine. So thank you so much for everyone introducing yourselves. But before we get to know where we're going, we need to understand where we came from. So right now, I have the privilege to my left of being with our BSC legacy, Wendell. And can you just tell us a little bit about the formation of the BSC, understanding the foundation of it? What were your ideals and your vision when developing what the BSC was, and to see it come to fruition?
Thank you. I thought I was prepared for this question. We had a Zoom call amongst us, about last week sometime, and this came up. Luster, you make sure you're there. Luster, it was 71, I got here in 72. I can tell you, I don't know, it's not there. I looked again this morning. There was what we call a BSC house. It was a haunted house, okay? It was in the middle of a field, and we were afraid to go upstairs, okay? I think there was only one or two rooms that we even dared to go into, okay? The first floor, that was it, okay? And, but you have to remember that there was, I think, 4 or 5, they were all brothers, because we had no sisters here, we had no women. My mother knew that before I came here.
Strategic choice? Uh-oh.
We don't speak. So it was important for the 9 of us that was here that came, because we were the largest contingent ever to come, to have a place that we could meet one another and talk about things and air out our grievances. You got to remember, we were 18, 19-year-olds, and we didn't know anything, okay? The college experience itself is dramatic as it is, and to be dropped off here like most of us was in the middle of this white sea, okay, was, rather daunting. And so we were looking out for one another, like, who is he, where is he, where do you live, and that kind of thing. And so the BSC was a way for us to get to know one another, to share one another, to talk about how afraid we were, to brag about things that we knew that wasn't true, all of those things, okay? So it was, I have to give Davidson a little credit. They knew that we needed a place like that. I have to give Luster Strong and the people who came before us a lot of credit, because they knew what we were going to be going through. I can't even imagine what they went through the year or two before that we got here, because at least we had 8 of us. There was only like 3 or 4 of them then. 10, yeah, because we had 2 that didn't graduate with us. But it was out like being in a desert. And we got to know one another, and we got to know Davidson, and Davidson got to know us, okay? And that was the biggest thing. They got to hear a voice of us, because as the longer we stayed here, I won't say the more bolder we became, but the more vocal we became to say, we need a platform. We need a way to express ourselves with ourselves. And Davidson listened, okay? It was a long road. I do remember feeling a lot better when I came back my sophomore year, finding out that we finally had females on board. But there were no black females, so now what do we do now, okay? Okay, it was a different time, okay? And I also want to throw out something to you that a lot of times I didn't think about until just a few years ago. It was a turbulent time of our country. It was the 70s. It was Watergate. It was Vietnam just ending, okay? There were a lot of things that were going on, not just the BSC. Davidson was in a tremendous change. And so all of those things were swirling around, and in some ways it reminded me a little about what's going on today, okay? There are a lot of issues, and there were a lot of issues then, okay? And we were dealing with those. It wasn't just the BSC. Each house had one television, and we would all get down into the lobby and look at the television. And we would look at the proceedings that were going on for Watergate. And you would look at whatever the news outlet was of the bodies coming back from Vietnam, okay? And then we would look at the civil rights movement, and we would look at the Black Panthers. And we were all in the middle of that and trying to figure out at 18, 19-year-olds where we fit. Where did we fit? And I remember that so well because I felt like sometimes, why am I not out there at a HBCU? Why am I not out there protesting? Why am I not out there making my voice heard? Here I am. What the hell am I doing here? Okay? And not realizing until years later that what we were doing, we were being pioneers. But at 18, 19 years old, you don't know that. Okay? Now I sit here and I see 50 years later, it seems like a long time, but it's really not, okay? And I see what we have wrought, and I'm proud of it, very.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And it resonated with me, and I know it resonated with a lot of the audience, that we all were dropped off here at Davidson into a sea of whiteness, and we all had to become pioneers in our own way and our own light. And amongst this panel, we have different people from different decades, and I would like us to kind of just speak about the ways in which we pioneered for the students on this campus, pioneered for Black students, and found our voices in ways in which allowed the BSC to become a vehicle for that. So if we can just kind of popcorn it around. I know we're sitting, well, not me, but we're sitting in legacy to present. And so if we could go through and just kind of popcorn in ways in which, we, in our introductions, we spoke about some of those milestones, but to touch on them, expand, please.
Well, I'll piggyback on Wendell when he talked about the haunted BSC house. We had the second haunted BSC house. When I came, it was a little house on Jackson Court, and it had these really ugly curtains, and there was a refrigerator in there where the freezer had frozen this one big block of ice, and we'd go in there and look, and we said, we're gonna thaw that out? We're like, no, because we don't know what that is back there. You could see things in the ice, but that was my freshman year. Shortly after that, I think they were building it. The Commons, the Vail Commons opened my freshman year, and they picked up 2 houses that had been in that spot on Patterson Court, and they moved them around, and we started advocating that the BSC wanted one of those houses. And at first, they didn't want to give it to us because they said, well, you're not an eating house, you're not a fraternity, you shouldn't be on Patterson Court. We convinced them that we did need to be on Patterson Court. And then we convinced them that we should have a nice house. So by the time we got done, and by the time one of our members basically sat on this doorstep of the physical plant owner and said, we need furniture, we had the most beautiful house on campus. And it's very difficult now for me to come back, and I just have to accept that the world has changed. But it was the place that we were all the time. I mean, it had couches, had a little dance floor, a little crappy kitchen in the back, but it was the center of our lives. I think they said we had 40 when I was here. We used to always say, y'all got 15 hiding in the basement because we can't count 40. We don't know where the 40 were. We never saw them. But the ones that were here, that we were there. And what's very different now is that there's so many other things that black students can do here. There were no sororities and fraternities. Most of us did not get involved very much in student government. We had one, Rod. He did student government, but most of us didn't. So the Black Student Coalition was the center of our existence. And like Dana said, because of that, and my daughters heard me say this too, we had what I call a lifeboat mentality. We knew that we were in this sea, and that lifeboat was at BSC House, and that was where we went to be safe. And so I'm thrilled now. I remember we used to say, if we have done our job, if we do our jobs right, at some point, this won't be necessary. But I'm thrilled to know that we did our job right, but it's still necessary.
So my experience was a little bit different. As I stated earlier, I was one of 2 black women who were brought in with my class, and there were 15 black guys brought in. I didn't know, sort of like Wendell said, his mom didn't tell him that there weren't any women here. I didn't know that there weren't any sororities here. I fully came to Davidson prepared to pledge AKA. My godmom was an AKA, one of my best friends was an AKA. So when I got here, I said, well, there are no sororities. I mean, what do you mean there are no sororities? There are fraternities. What do you mean there are no sororities? Didn't do my homework. And so I quickly thought, well, you know, J.C. Smith is right up the street. Queens College is right up the street. I'll just go and pledge at one of those institutions. How many of y'all know that that didn't happen? I didn't know, again, not doing my homework, that we were not well received in the rest of the institutions in this area.
No kidding.
And so the 1 or 2 times that we visited J.C. Smith and got chased off the campus, we realized this is not going to happen. And so I completely gave up on that. I was one of the students who chose to join one of the eating houses. I was a member of POX. My roommate joined POX, and so I joined POX. And so I did BSC, I did POX, and I also, you know, scattered around the other eating houses because, again, when you're one of 2, you're still trying to find your way, as Wendell said, find your way and figure out where your voice is going to be best heard. And so, again, the BSC was the center, but then I had other options for social gatherings and allowing my voice to be heard on this campus while I was here.
To continue with that.
Yeah, continue with the
Okay.
same theme.
Okay. So I think in terms of pioneering, sometimes we look at that as some sort of big public, sort of fantastic event. But rather it is the little things when we talk about pioneering, and that's sort of the reflection of my experience here, 88 through 92. Just to keep with the theme, I don't know how many of you like me had conversations with Dean Terry about black fraternities here, but I had a bunch of them, right? And so, but the issue there was how it took showing up, Lester, again and again for things to be different. So we had to have these conversations. There were some conversations before us, Russ, and there were some conversations after us. And then the NPHC got here, what year? 2000, what? Okay, 2004, okay? That's just one example, though. So being on this campus, from the time that Wendell and the brothers came, and Janet and Dana, and being on this campus has been, and is pioneering. In my estimation, it continues to be. Davidson is a lot different place now. I understand that. And we continue to work to live into, I think, its ideals. And so when we have things like this, when we increase the numbers, but not only the numbers, when it begins to be not only a place that we can come, but it becomes a place where we're at home, then it begins to sort of be the kind, we see the results of this sort of pioneering work. So I'm going to say that the pioneering continues.
Yeah, I think that the BSC that I was here for is the culmination of what you all did. Because by the time I was here, I mean, my class had like, I don't know, it felt like 60 black, like a lot of black, it must have felt like an HBCU compared to which I was at, because we had like a whole bunch of black folks here. And so like by the time we were on campus, you know, like alphas, like Aaron said, alphas were here, Kappas were coming on. It just felt like a power, like an infrastructure. It felt like you had something that was stabilized on campus, and you felt like you had support. Like you felt like you had people at your back whenever you want to do something. So whenever we want to like have a rally, or we want to like talk about race on campus, or like flip some tables, do whatever we got to do, like you feel like that there is a house that is full and entrenched in the culture of this school, that like they're not taking it away. Like they're not taking that house away. They can't do nothing about us. We here to stay. And that's like because of your work. And I think that I was here for like that next sort of level of the BSC.
I think echoing David's sentiment and then the sentiments of others that I've shared, as the BSC, or I guess the BSC I was here for, as David put it, had this responsibility now after there were these many different activities that black students could get involved in to, I think I alluded to it earlier, still keep black students united and together. And so not only thinking about the NPHC organizations, but David mentioned Shades of Brown. I talked about this whole golden era of being at Davidson and thinking about things that were happening historically and in society as well, as Wendell said. And so being here when President Obama was elected for the first time was a really significant thing at Davidson, and thinking about how the BSC as a space and as an organization served as a safe space, as you know, the term that's been used today, we're trying to figure ourselves out, figure out who seemed to be supportive, who we thought was supportive or we were friends with before, but had a reaction that maybe activated something in us that we didn't know. We thought this person was cool or safe. And so when I think about pioneering, from my standpoint, I think about the BSC as an organization pioneering in the midst of now all of these multiple activities and outlets for black students, yet still having them connected to the organization and having them connected to the house as a safe space to be able to return to and utilize in lots of other ways. I know David mentioned kind of some rabble-rousing, some protesting, things like that, and I remember a number of those kind of things in my time, but the BSC always being a space to either host events or a space where people could gather after those events to kind of debrief, decompress, and make sense of what we had just experienced.
And I'll have to echo what Jane Stovall said about you creating the BSC so that we don't need it anymore. I don't want to say that we don't need it anymore. It's definitely here, but as you said, black students have definitely dispersed on campus. They're up in organizations, they're kind of doing everything. We're kind of leaders everywhere on campus. But I would say one of the biggest moments two biggest moments was the COVID pandemic, coming to college in the COVID pandemic. You couldn't go in the BSC. You had to wear masks everywhere. You couldn't meet anybody. You couldn't be in groups of bigger than 10. It was a really rough time on campus, but still, the BSU tried to host events that still met those guidelines and still celebrated us despite us not being, we couldn't really be together physically, but having virtual events or having stuff outside where we don't have to wear masks. But that was one of the biggest moments for me where I saw that, like, although we were maybe not even on campus, we were at home taking classes, we still tried to have events to keep us together. And then the second thing I will say is when the B got taken off the BSC house. If y'all know about that, I think about last year, the B was taken off, the big B in front of the house was taken off, and the way students just pioneered on campus, putting petitions together, talking to administration, we were not playing about that. We want our B back. So that was probably one of the biggest moments I saw, because it wasn't just black students as well, but just the Davidson community came together to support us, because it was like, why you take the B and not the S or the C?
Yikes. Wow, that's interesting. Y'all got too much time in your hands. That's what it seems like. But thank you so much for sharing. And Aaron, you mentioned the BSC being a safe space, and Janet, you talked about the BSC being this life raft. I want to touch on the people in the 2000s plus, like David, Aaron, Caro. Can you talk about what it means for the BSC to be a safe space? What does it mean for it to be like this safe haven, this life raft while you're here? I know that we're continuing to pioneer, but at the point in which we have all of these activities, the point in which Black students are having these communities outside of the BSC, like, how's it become still a stable part of your Davidson experience? How's it been like your home away from home?
You go ahead. I can go first. That didn't sit right in my spirit. Like, they took the B off the B. Like, I'm still trying to I need a minute. I just need a minute because we about to yeah.
We gotta talk about it later. Off camera, off mic.
I think there are a lot of things that come to mind for me about the notion of it being a safe space and a lifeboat. Lots of things come to mind. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is who it was a lifeboat for. And I know we're primarily talking about Black students, but I think as one of the, when I was here, 10 diversity coordinating board organizations and being the only one that had a space, the BSC was able to be a space for lots of different subpopulations of marginalized students. And so I think that's really significant, right? So collaborating with OLAS and ACAA, GSA and other organizations under that umbrella, that was significant. And utilizing the significance of the space to not only preserve and save ourselves, but also bring other folks in who didn't have a space. I think the other piece too is when I think about the many different types of functions that were hosted at the BSC. That's what comes to mind for me. So I don't know how popular this was after we left, but impromptu parties were a big thing while we were here, which was cool. But I think more importantly, just like there could be an impromptu party, there was also space to be able to invite speakers and host a panel. And I think that responsibility that we took on of like maintaining the house, cleaning it ourselves and things of that nature, it was nice to feel like you had a space that was yours. And so whether it's parties or speakers or just being there to spend time and do homework, I know in my senior year I served as president. That was one of the big things I pushed of, let's make this BSC house our BSC home. And so the fact that folks felt comfortable to come down and do homework, that we really made an effort for the house manager to ensure that the kitchen was stocked for those who couldn't travel home for break and when Commons was closed. So all of those things come to mind when I think about safe space, a lifeboat, and the way that the BSC as an organization, as a house, was able to serve those purposes.
I would definitely agree with you on the affinity groups. The BSC is kind of like the first affinity organization on Patterson Court. Soon we'll have OLAS and PASA, but before that happened, it was just like any time a different organization needed the house, it was like, yeah, sure, this is your space as well. So it is a space for Black students as well, but I also do want to emphasize that it was the pioneer for also having affinity groups to have their spaces on campus as well, a physical space on Patterson Court. And I would definitely have to say that in terms of what it means for a space for home to me, I think a lot of times, especially Black students on campus, they're really involved on campus, they're doing so many things. I think when we have like our study nights where we can all just come and sit and do homework, it's like I'm just talking up a storm, I'm not even doing work, because I'm like, I haven't talked to my sister, I haven't talked to my brother in a long time. And it's just, you get so wrapped up in Davidson sometimes that you forget that you have that home base. You have somewhere where you can just sit and talk and just sit on the couches and watch TV and kind of just relax with the people that know what it's like to be here when you look like this. So I think it's still home for me, and it's still a home for a lot of Black students on campus.
I think to be Black at Davidson is to at least once while you're here have like the breaking point. Maybe it's just me. No, maybe, but like you just have that moment where it's just like I can't do it, and I think a lot of times the BSC holds that pain and that whatever, that breaking point, and sort of restores us in a lot of different ways. I was actually thinking about the function of the impromptus last night, because we were talking about the impromptu parties, and I think like at the time we were just thinking about them as like, yeah, we just want to have a party, we want to do, but like I really think that they were like, when Black folks are like, we want to get together and dance together with each other in the midst of what we're going through, like there was a restorative property of impromptu. It's not just like, let's just go and like party on a Friday night because but like there is just something about like like in the like tradition of black folks going back forever of just being like, let's just gather and dance, you know? And I think that like the impromptu does that when that spirit hits folks and they're just like, we're gonna gather, we're gonna play the music, we're gonna send emails or texts or like, I don't know what y'all are doing. Like, I don't know, y'all was sending.
Tell to put some respect in your name.
Yeah, I don't know, y'all was sending carrier pigeons out there, faxing, I don't know what y'all was doing. I had or horse buggy, I don't know what y'all was doing out there, but we was doing what we could do, you know. But like the point is like there's music playing and black folks just gathering where music playing. That's what we always do, and I think that right, just folks just came through. But like, I mean, that's like, you know, you go back to Congo Square, that's what we did, you know. And I just think that like that's just like the power of that, and I just think that just having that space like kept so many of us whole when this school had no, you know, concern with how well we were kept, you know, outside of that space. So.
Thank you. Pre-2000, you're gonna have a chance to rebut. I'm gonna give you your space.
Dara, I just want to say one thing
Go
about
ahead.
that music, though. Because we did have impromptus, and part of that, and I'm not a scholar on somatics and all of that, but part of that was the healing property of that, right? Feeling the music, having the party, being in that buzz did something to restore, rejuvenate, encourage so that we could go on. And I think that's connected to this idea of having a place that you can call home. I would venture to say that thing saved some people.
Thank you. And let's kind of continue that conversation about the BSC being restorative. Can you, Wendell, Janet, and Dana talk about, you know, your experiences of Black joy on this campus? Like, what did it mean to like experience Black joy and just being Black in your full self and coming with your authentic self as much as you could come with it at Davidson? What did that look like for you? How did that feel? What moments are really pivotal in that experience?
I really don't want to go first because I'm thinking, and I applaud you all because we didn't have that. We had nothing. We needed that. And I can tell you there was 2 or 3 of us that didn't make it because we didn't have that. When we wanted to hear something Black, we had to go across the tracks. And we dared not go to J.C. Smith. Right? But the need was there. It was really there. Like, where are my people? Where's my culture? I didn't come from this, yet I'm here. And I've got to make it. And it was tough. We only had each other to relate to. And yeah, we didn't have as David said, the technology. We had 45s and 33s. I have to tell you this little story. Rusty reminded me last night. We had asked the college to let's bring in some Black. He's ready. Some Black artists, and they relented. I don't know how much they gave us, some money or whatever. And I never forget, we got this group called Ripple. I didn't even know who the hell they were. They showed up. It was maybe 5 or 6, 7 of them. It was like 50 people from around the neighborhood, and we all sat around and wondered, what the hell are we doing here? Okay? That was our Black cultural experience.
Where did you find them?
I don't know where the hell they found it.
Yeah, was the music good?
Yeah, I almost felt bad for them. Okay? Oh man! And I remember telling one of the guys that we should have had some Ripple. Okay? So, it was a bleak time, but it was a learning time, and I cannot it's only been the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years that I've been able to wrap my mind around our experience. It was dramatic. And I cannot tell you, I cannot express to you the feeling that I have of seeing you all here now. It is an amazing thing. But it came from nothing, and you all have brought it to be something, okay? I was down here, what was it, October, November, we was here at the football game for Larry Hardaway. And I remember my roommate for 4 years, Charles Bethea, coming by. I'm down in the field, I'm sitting there, and he says to me, and I had noticed, he says, there are more black cheerleaders here than the black students when we're here. Okay? And I'm saying, hell yeah. Yeah. Maybe they brought in the J.C. Smith cheerleaders. Yeah. It was just, it was bleak. We depended on one another. And the BSC helped us to do that. You have to have some place that you can gather. Now, we had a secondary BSC that is not going to ever be published anywhere called The Ghetto, where I don't know how we even started that, but we all got together and we commandeered one of the hallways, okay? And we lived together, okay? And dared white people to come through. That was about as much rebel rousing that we had at that time. Okay? That were good times. That were building times. That was camaraderie times. But the times kept us together, not just for 4 years, but for 50 years. My best friend, Larry Hardaway, passed 2 years ago. And what I remember is, after all those years, he and I talked every day. I remember coming in from the Middle East on a ship and pulling into Fort Lauderdale. The only thing I was concerned about was my mother knowing that I was okay, that I'd been in a war zone and I was okay. And I was terrified that she had read something on the news that would scare her. I was the only kid. And when we pulled in, there was Larry Hardaway. That's what the black experience was for us. We followed each other's career, we followed each other's family, we became each other's family. That's what that bleakness of those 4 years were, okay? And now it has blossomed into this, okay? It's an amazing thing, okay?
Your question was the moments of joy. And we had a ghetto too. It was Basement Centel. And I think that several of y'all sitting here lived in Basement Centel. I don't know if you ever had anybody white who dared to move on that hall. For some reason, I think at one point they ran them off real quick. And when I think back over the years and I've thought about, there's so many moments that I think about, but the one that sticks in my head, and there's a picture of it somewhere, Judy Hooks, she's Judy Harrell Hooks, was my freshman roommate. And we at that point were probably the only two black women on campus who could cook, which means we always had somebody in our room. And, but we had these two little things, they were called hot pots. They were like little, they were called hot pots. But they just boil, all you could do was boil water in them, okay? They were little, you boil water in them. And we had 2 hot pots and a toaster oven. And Commons was closed, and back then, people didn't know about food insecurity. You know, the brothers were just hungry all the time. But we had a refrigerator, and one night, somebody said, you know what? I miss being home. Judy and I decided, with our 2 hot pots and that toaster oven, that we were gonna cook dinner. And somebody had a little fry daddy, about that big. We fried chicken, made macaroni and cheese, made a chocolate cake, and went down to Basement Centel and had dinner. And there's a picture of it somewhere. We were like laying on the bed, somebody's laying across the bed laughing. It was moments like that magnified. because there were so few of us. So when we wanted to have a party, we picked up the phone. And you called around, okay? But there are those moments. And then there were the moments where we came together in ways to make a statement. And look, I was always running my mouth, okay? I was always in trouble for something. Always. But when we talk about how people stand up for you, the guy that I was dating at the time had the misfortune to be the basketball coach for our intramural basketball team. And the only reason I was on teams is I had to get a PE credit. All right, Dana could actually play. And so when so it was all black female team, and when we had one white girl who tried to join. We were Sisters Incorporated. When she played, she was Sisters Etc. And one night we had a game playing another team, and they called our coach and said, we can't do it. We're gonna call it. We're just gonna reschedule. So we said fine. And then they came and showed up, and we're gonna make us call a forfeit. So Keith called around campus and tried to get a team together, and couldn't find Dana at first, right? She was probably doing what she was doing, but anyway, couldn't find her. So he actually had me there, and normally I was a scorekeeper. I was just the inside scorekeeper. He put me in the game. He said, look, just stand on that line and don't do anything until Dana gets here. So I stood on that line. I watched him run up the court. I watched him run up the court. Somebody threw a ball. I did that. But the game was very heated because we were mad about what they did, what they tried to do. So Dana finally showed up. I just started walking off the court. He's like, no, I have to call timeout. I'm like, fine, whatever. So Dana came in. It was hot. Now, Judy Harold Hooks was the nicest human being you will ever meet. The only reason people talked to me was because she was my roommate. But Judy, even that night, was mad enough because they had a girl on another team who was hard of hearing. Judy got in her face and said, I know you can't hear. Read my lips. I'm going to kick your ass. It was that bad. But when I talk about how then we stood up for each other, the scorekeeper on the other side was a little heated too. And I did something, and he got in my face, and he goes, he just cussed me out. And I looked at him, I said, wait a minute, because he was real tall. I got a chair, because I was too short, and stood up in the chair so I could get his face. And I was cussing him out, and he drew back. And the brothers were sitting there, and they were like, man, we can't let you hit her. Now, we know she's in your face, and it's probably justified, but if you hit her, we gonna beat the hell out of you. End of conversation. And the very next day, I was in Dean Terry's office, it's one of many times, in trouble, and he said to me, the white guy was there, and he goes, she called me a cracker. I said, I did not call you a cracker. He goes, yes, you did, because I didn't know what that was, and Dean Terry was like, where you from? But anyway. And I remember I said, I did not call you a cracker. I called you a redheaded son of a bitch. I didn't call you a cracker.
My God.
But I still
Someone
remember
take her mic.
All that to say, what I remember most about this place and about what the joy was the fact that, like I said, lifeboat mentality, whatever, there were so few of us that we became family. And when you talk about, what's retained, my daughter's aunt is Judy Harold Hooks, who's married to Charles Hooks, who's her boyfriend here. My daughter's godmother is Sabrina Walton. When my children were young and were going to Chuck E. Cheese for a birthday party, Auntie Dana rolled up with one of the funeral home limos to take them to the Chuck E. Cheese party. They learned to swim in another alumni's pool. Maya and my other daughter, Alexis, grew up surrounded not just by Davidson alumni, but black alumni. So the level of expectation for excellence that they grew up with is unparalleled. And Maya's still mad at me some days because she ended up here, but she'll get over it. But anyway, she grew up in that space, and that would not have happened if it had not been for those moments of joy, for those moments of resistance and support, that we survived those 4 years. But we didn't just survive, we have thrived because of them. We didn't know at the time that we were going to thrive. But to this day, I will never regret that I made this choice, because it has shaped my life.
And so, being one of two, I didn't know why Davidson was offering me so much money until I got here and realized they were desperate for another black woman. But with that being said, one of my best friends to this day, when they finally recruited me, Davidson said, Dana, please come visit, come visit. Y'all know what they do. They get you on this campus. And they got me on this campus on one of those Chamber of Commerce days. It was a weekend. Janet was my host room. And I met, at the time her name was Elaine Stone. She's Elaine Youngblood now. And Elaine said, Dana, let's go for a bike ride. Now, I'm new to this place. I didn't get dropped off. They picked me up from the airport because they were so desperate for another black woman that they gave me the royal treatment. And so Elaine and I went for a bike ride, literally 10, 15 miles in the back roads of this part of Mecklenburg County. Y'all, when I said we saw cows and horses, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't see cars, I don't see people. And at one point, I think she realized we probably need to head back to Davidson's because 2 black women on a bicycle and on these back roads is probably not a good idea. But that experience, this girl who didn't know me said to me, I want to get to know you, let's spend some time together, on one of those Chamber of Commerce days here in Davidson, North Carolina, was what hooked me. And when I went back home, I told my mom, I said, okay, I'm not going to Georgia. She really wanted me to go to Georgia. And I said, I'm not going to Georgia. I said, I think I want to go to Davidson. She said, Dana, nobody's ever heard of that school. We don't know anything about that school. I said, I think I want to go to Davidson. I came to Davidson because of Elaine and Janet and the other folks who embraced me on that weekend. That was enough to convince me that this was the place that I needed to be. Fast forward, 2, 3, 4 years. Yes, there were moments of pure joy, because this one right here kept us in trouble. And we were always looking for ways to get out of trouble, and promise you that we were not included in it. Janet was by herself, we were not there. But the real reason that I think that the real reason of joy that I think that I love the most is the fact that we can't get rid of each other. Y'all, I'll be 60 next year. I know I don't look it, but I will be 60 next year. And the thought that you've known somebody and been a part of your life longer than anything else in the world, that's unusual. My friends who go to other colleges, they think that we're strange. They think that our friendships are not real. They don't believe me when I say that we've been friends since the 80s. The 80s. Before some of y'all were born.
Some was even a thought.
A rookie.
Uh-oh.
A rookie.
I mean, that's
60.
unusual, y'all. If you ever talk to your friends that went to other colleges, they can't name one person that they've been friends with for 50 years, much less 15 or 20. And we still get together. I have an annual hamburger and margarita party. And my Davidson friends come, and my sisters are still amazed that they will come from far and near in Atlanta to come to McDonough, Georgia, just to eat a hamburger and drink a margarita with me. Or come to New York for a birthday party. So there are lots of moments of joy that we can think of. Some that we should never talk about in public.
Can I interrupt here just a little bit? We talk about us. Let me tell you something. You mentioned, and his name has been mentioned 2 or 3 times. Will Terry. Will Terry saved my life. I spent more time in Will Terry's office than I did in the classroom. He would remind me, your mother sent you here for a reason. You either live up to it or go and talk to her. And God knows I wasn't going to talk to her. Will Terry, there were several other professors on campus too, who went out of their way to do whatever they could do to help us survive. And when I say survive, I do mean survive. Davidson made an investment. They did. And their story has to be told also. It's a whole lot you don't know when you're 18, 19 years old. There was a lot of things going on, and there was a lot of irons in the fire. And it was important for us to succeed. And there were people on campus here who didn't want us to succeed. Make no mistake about that. And there were people who made sure that we succeeded. And that has to be said. And let me mention one other thing that we probably won't mention while we're here. It was the people across the tracks. It was the people across the tracks. That wasn't but just a few of us here and there, but when you would see them mowing the lawns, cooking the food, doing the laundry, you could see the pride in their faces. And they would say things like, "Are you okay? Are you getting enough food? What are you doing this Sunday? You're not going home for that holiday?" There's no words I can put to that. Their story has to be told too. Because that's one of the big changes that I see here, is that it's really no quote unquote people across the tracks anymore. And they were so instrumental to our success.
When you say you saw it in the 76s, we saw it in the 80s. I mean, we got invited to church, folks, and on Sundays, they would feed us after church, even though Davidson had all this food over here, but there's something about Sunday dinner after church with folks that you just finished worshiping with that gave you something, that lifted you up. And a lot of us went to church, and when they didn't see us, folks, they would track us down. They would come looking for us because they knew that we weren't going to church anywhere else. And some folks never went to church.
Every now and then.
But they really embraced us when they really embraced and welcomed us, not just when they were physically here on this campus, but when we went to worship with them on Sundays and everything. And they would invite us, come back, we're having such and such on next week. We're having such and such on next week. We want to see you. Come back, let's eat. They were good about feeding us, y'all.
And for Michelle, her name was Miss Georgia. Miss Georgia from across the track. And we had conversations probably, and she probably more than I, but just about every day with Miss Georgia, who cleaned our dorm. And one of the things that I thought about is how many people walked past her and did not talk to her.
Right.
But we got to know family and children and grandchildren.
Right.
Miss Georgia.
Right.
I'm going to call Miss Georgia's name in this space.
Yeah.
I want to put two things really quickly into conversation about joy. I come out of a tradition that says this joy that I have, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. That's my tradition. Spiritual tradition. I come out of an activist tradition that says that black joy is actually unconcerned with the oppression that we feel. It happens to be a tool. Shout out to Prentice Hempfield. Check her podcast out. It happens to be a tool of resilience and resistance. But outside of the resistance and the resilience and the resistance is something we already have. So for me, the Black Student Coalition was about that uninhibited joy that I already had, and every now and then had to be reminded of it.
Yes.
Our joy is unconcerned.
Yes.
And so that is the thing when we talk about the impromptu.
Yes.
Sometimes we didn't know we needed it,
Yeah.
but we did. All we needed was a space to unleash what was already there.
Yes.
And that, when I think about the legacy of the Black Student Coalition, what comes to me is this joy that I have. Nobody gave it to me, and no one can take it away.
That was a whole word. And I think we're on our last question, so I'm gonna combine two questions in one and have every panelist answer, and then I'm gonna open it up to the crowd and the audience so that you guys can come and someone's gonna run a mic through and you can ask your questions to the panelists. But Sterling, that was a great segue into my last question, which is two parts. Can you tell us about some of the demands that you made for Davidson, and how do you see those demands like currently in what we're looking at right now at Davidson, but also like how it's going to build upon the legacy of the BSC, of Black students moving forward?
Let's go all the way down to the end.
Yeah, we can start at the end first. I know it's loaded.
It's loaded.
It is. So take it in parts.
I guess I have to go back to the B. I gotta go back to the B. This was one weekend, a weekend passed, it was Sunday morning, and we were walking to Commons. And then in the BSC e-board group chat, someone in the picture was like, the B's missing. We're like, huh, what do you mean the B's missing? And then it's like, it's not there anymore. We're like, huh, okay. We didn't know what to do, honestly. We were just kind of like, we don't know if we should bring it to administration. Should we just let it pass? Should we let something happen? But ultimately, I know with the support of the alumni who were like, no, this needs to be replaced. This needs to be done. And the BSC should not be paying it out of their own money because we didn't do this to ourselves. Someone did it to us. So I remember I'm the vice president of the BSC, and at the time, Ebony Thomas, the president, we went up to and talked to Dean McCrae and also Denise Simpson to talk about getting a replacement. And they were really open and willing to work with us. And it was just one of the times where that, it wasn't just the deans that were really supportive, but just the community. We had an Instagram post that every organization was posting on their story saying, we want to be back now, we want to be back now, and supporting the BSC as well. And the SGA even offered to give funds to help fund the B and give it back to us. And I think it definitely speaks to the foundation that y'all built here, because that process was so much easier than what y'all have gone through. That process was made easier because of what you did. Because I can't imagine that happening, when you came here. I imagine the struggles you had to do that. But for us, it was as simple as having conversations with an administration and it getting done the next day. And I really appreciated that. So I really want to say thank you again for all your work that you've done here. So I think, thank you so much for that.
Do we ever find out what happened to the bee?
We don't know what happened. Yeah, it was just taken off, and it's on. It's not like it's gonna fall off. It was put on about a couple of years ago. So we were checking the S and the C, and those are glued tight. So someone had to pry it off. So yeah.
That's still crazy to me. When I think about the question said demands that the BSC made and
then the legacy,
of those
demands.
All right, so I think I'm gonna be a little less positive than I've been.
It's okay, speak your truth.
So one of the things that comes to mind for me with demands, there are two things. One is more positive than the other. One, the positive end is how demands can be met and you can utilize the momentum of previous demands being met, right? And so I referenced the three MPHC organizations chartered in literally 3 years, for those who remember, which is still surreal. But I think that there was this ability to build off of the successes that others had to have demands be met. Now, the other side of that was being here and talking in small groups with other students about demands around black faculty members, an Africana Studies major, things that we see more of now, but then learn about Janet and Project 87, and there's the same things that had been asked for in that time as well. So, you know, to sit, for myself to be at Davidson from 2007 to 2011, and, you know, as you mentioned, Wendell, you're 18, 19, you don't really know too much, but then you learn that these things that you think you thought of on your own are things that people had been fighting for, especially when you think about the life cycle of a college. Every 4 years, it's like a new group of people, and if, you know, you don't have that history shared, whether it's captured through a historian or staff members that worked a long time that share those things, then, you know, the cycle could just repeat itself. And so for me, I held a lot of frustration during my time at the fact that there was a concrete list of demands in 1987 that folks in 2007 to 2011 were still asking for, that ultimately some have come to fruition in 2020, 2021. So I think in some ways that's the legacy, but also, you know, it's hard to mention that and not mention some of the frustration and what felt like futility in the midst of it. But again, I think back to the reason why we're here, the BSC providing a space for all of that, regardless of how you felt about it, to flesh out those ideas, to get other people on board, to, you know, as older students reach out to the younger black students from an organizational standpoint. That's what comes to mind for me with demands, them kind of being met, but also the way that the BSC legacy ties into it.
Okay, so I want to talk about this beat a little bit. So we've been here, we're talking about the BSC and the safe space that's needed, and I'm trying not to make eye contact, so the resilience that's necessary to survive at Davidson, right? The resilience is a reflection of the black folks here, right? But the resilience is necessary because of what white power structures do to us every single day in spaces like this. And if you are doing things like that, like it's consistent, you're taking bees down in the 21st century, like white folks, get your house in order. You know what I'm saying? Like, we do not need to be responsible for providing this stuff because we do not need to hold white supremacy. White folks need to hold that and get your house in order and get those, like, stop doing that to black folks. Like, these kids, it's extremely frustrating to me to have graduated in 2008 and there are kids in 2020, 2021, 2022 who are dealing with this idiotic nonsense. Get your house in order so we don't have to be so resilient and we don't have to deal with all this other stuff. We could just be our beautiful, brilliant black selves on a regular basis. All right, so in terms of some of the demands and the things that I have asked and would like to see is when we did our rally, I wanted to make racism, homophobia, all that part of the honor code in like a very concrete way. When you write about when you do your essay for the honor code to get into Davidson, there should be some compartment about how you treat marginalized folks in your life and how you're gonna treat them when you come across them at Davidson. That should be a requirement for you to go to this school as part of the honor code. If you steal a laptop, you get kicked out. You do some racist shit, you get kicked out. End of story. I would like to see that be more codified in what's going on. I think also when we talk about people in the city of Davidson, like there should not be generational poverty a few blocks away from a school that has billions or millions of dollars. And we should have some sort of place where those kids are getting the type of education that their parents are working hard for them to have. Like there should be some sort of, I know we have whatever that Davidson does for the city. Davidson could do more. Like there should be support for all those people who are working here so their kids are taken care of, so that like they pour into us. We need to have something that pours into the community of Davidson in a way that they have, you know, access to generational wealth and something that can get them out of the situation that they're in. We should not have people who are, grandparents who are working here and they're struggling in the same way their kids are and still feeding us and clothing us at this school. So Davidson has a responsibility to those folks. So those are a couple things that I have that I think that Davidson needs to really, take into consideration.
Hear, hear. I echo what David just said, absolutely. I think one of the things about demands in my time here, there is a bit of loss from the standpoint of having been an athlete. For me, in some ways, it functioned as a bubble. And there are some things that those black students who were here, that they were experiencing and going through, that on an individual level, I may not have necessarily experienced on a day-to-day basis. One of the reasons a lot of times during the season we were gone, right? So there was this bubble effect that sort of, in some ways, kept me, I'm speak for me, sort of at arm's length from some of the daily things that could trigger trauma and negative experiences. But what I will say is that the way in which we moved during my time here, and I'm looking at Lindsay Mills back there on the back row, who was BSC president, and some of my fellow basketball teammates here to my right, is that we moved in surreptitious and clandestine kind of ways in order to try to get things done. Because I couldn't call mom and say, Mama, I lost my scholarship, right? No, seriously, it was about that in some ways, but it was also about trying to, at 17 and 18 and 19 years old, figure out how to handle all of this, how to hold all of this, when it ought to be that I'm just a human being having a college experience, and I happen to have the privilege to play the game I love and so on and so forth. But it was not just that. And so I think I don't know about demands, really. But what I do know about is we tried to figure out how to navigate a place, listen to this, that literally was built by us, but not for us. What do you do? And so I think the ways in which we tried to move and find out about that scholarship we didn't know about, or that travel opportunity that we didn't know about, right? We had to do our research. We had to huddle at the BSC, and we had to figure out how we were going to move. So the demand really was see us. Not as somebody who plays on your basketball team, but who is a full, whole human being here trying to do what everybody else is trying to do, and for some of us, live out the dreams of people who raised us.
And so, and I remind y'all again, being one of two, Sterling, I didn't want to always be seen, because in my class, I was the voice of every black student in my class because I was the student. And so sometimes you don't want to be the voice of every black student on this campus. You don't want to be the voice of every black person that they've ever come in contact with. Sometimes you're right, you just want to be a student. And so I was fortunate enough, in addition to people like Janet and Judy and Elaine, my roommate was this white female whose parents were probably some of the most liberal conservatives that I've ever met in my life. I had never in my life met white people like Amy Leonard's family. And for those of you who know the Leonards and their love of Davidson, Paul and Judy Leonard, their daughter Amy, hugged me and kissed me on the first time that we met. And I was about to die. Because I didn't know this girl. And I mean, she kissed me, y'all, on the very first time we met. And she was so excited to have me for her roommate, and she was so excited to share this experience with me. And she wanted me to have the experience that she had. And so we spent a lot of time together exploring this place. And I learned a lot about this place through her eyes as I tried to navigate it through my own eyes. And I was blessed in that sense, because some things I probably never would have done in my life. Who goes water skiing and really don't know how to swim that well? Who takes horseback riding as a PE class and hates horses? Who does that? But because of her and her desire for me to have an amazing experience like what she was having, a lot of times I didn't have the demands that some other students had. My only demand sometimes was, don't ask me to speak for the entire population of black students here at Davidson. Most of the time, that was my only demand. And sometimes I actually said the words, hell, I don't know. Because I'm 18, 19 years old from McDonough, Georgia. But at the end of the day, you realize there is a responsibility to educate, to inform. And so a lot of times I drug Amy to the BSC house. I brought her to the experiences that I was having, and she in turn brought some of her friends so that we all learned together, cultures and differences, and beginning to forgive ourselves for what we didn't know and embrace that which was being shown to us. I love James Taylor to this day, and I blame Amy. I do love James Taylor to this day. And I blame Amy. I know, right? And so the reality is, though, folks, you know, I don't think I had the demands that some of the earlier classes and some of the later classes had, simply because when you're literally solo in an experience, you just sort of find your way the best way you can. And I'm blessed to have had some really strong black women and a really amazing white friend who said, you know, I love you, and we're gonna do this thing together.
Well, my demands are clear. But what I need to say about Project 87 that a lot of people do not know is that that was not where I just said, oh, I'm going to figure this out. Project 87 was written spring of my junior year. I went to the student store, picked up my books. I lived off campus after my freshman year. Got my books, brought them back to my apartment, dropped them on the floor, and started crying. Cried for 2 days. I remember Judy, who had been my roommate freshman year, did not know where I was. And, you know, was like, are you okay? I took those books back to the student store, and I withdrew. So I was not enrolled spring of my junior year. I was vice president of BSC, so I showed up at meetings, but I was not enrolled. My parents, both are gone now, did not ever know that, because that summer, I made those credits up, because I knew I better walk across that stage in '85. But Project 87 came together because I was that frustrated and that hurt and that sad and just that broken that I finally said, look, I'm tired of this. Davidson keeps saying they don't know how to solve this problem. I'm gonna give you a plan. And if you say then, if I give you something that is measurable, that's clear, that is doable, and you don't do it, then what you're telling me is you never meant any of that. And that's okay, because you didn't build this school for me. This school was built for rich white boys. It was not built for me. And if I bring my broke female butt in here, black female butt in here, I get what I get. But what you're not gonna do is talk about having a disproportionate force for good in the world if you won't do this. Project 87, you know, I've been raised in hell for 3 years. So I figured, all right, nobody gonna pay attention to this. So I went to Stone Bottom, who was at that point president of the BSC. And I said, this cannot come out under my name. This needs to come out from the BSC. And Stone like, all right, let's do it. And so we put it in the newspaper, and this campus went nuts. We had professors writing notes telling me what was wrong with this. Students were on both sides. And I remember sitting there going, I've said things that are much more incendiary than this. But what I realized was that was the first time a demand had things in it that Davidson could not deny. That was the first time that the demand was concrete. It was not, y'all just need to act right. You need to do this. No, y'all need to do this. And so the legacy of that, I believe, is a lot of what's happened here. But in terms of what's going forward, I'm a trustee, and I'm working with Virgil Flood. We would like to build a DEI committee on the trustee board. We're trying to do that. And one of the first things that I'm going to ask that we do is something that I'm working on now, Project 2037. What I'd like to see happen is Davidson commit to building an anti-racism curriculum. Think about who graduates from this school. Really smart people who go out and become CEOs and CFOs. And now that I work with those people, I know the difference when a company is run by somebody who has an anti-racism mentality. Things happen. What if we become the place that creates those people? So I say 2037 because I'd like to see it start by 2027. 2037 is Davidson's 200th anniversary. I want to go find those 20, 30 kids that come through when they're running companies and see what they're doing. And I want that research to go public. And I want them to say that this is how you fix it. You make a concrete demand, you make a concrete decision, and you do it. And I'm going to give a sizable donation to this college very soon to fund that. So when y'all start seeing Project 2037, you heard about it here, and I hope you will get behind it. Because that will be our legacy, not just to Davidson, but to the world.
You got it.
I want to, Luster Strong, I'm looking at him. If you don't know him, you need to know him, okay? Luster is all your fault. Gosh, guys, everything that you all have said is very significant, very. Davidson's hard. Forget about BSC and all that for a moment. Davidson is hard. You had to work your behind off to graduate from Davidson. And there's a value to that. I came out of high school like most of us that go to Davidson. It was, you know, we did well, okay? I mean, but you got here and you had to learn how to work. You had to actually study. and learn how to make your bed, okay? And keep things clean and be responsible. I didn't learn that until my senior year.
Stop.
It was tough. And then you have to add, as David was talking about, the foolishness of the 21st century of having to deal with that kind of foolishness on top of it. Our challenge is to do more of this, talking to one another, communicating. That's the challenge. That's what moves us forward. It's not just Davidson. It is all around. It is me learning how to deal in a white society, and it's what got me through the Navy. Because the Navy, U.S. Navy, is white. You won't hear that on CNN, but it is. I was at sea for 11 years on 5 straight ships. And it was only on one ship that I was the only black officer. That wasn't just 20, 30 years ago. We have a lot of things to do. Jesus said, the harvest is great. Where are the harvesters? What each one of us has to do is remember that, hey, be the best student that you can be. If you're here, be the best that you can be. That's what gets you through the day. The best that you can be. Then the rest is a lot less. Never forget those type of things. Everything that you all are saying here is very, very true, but there are some fundamentals here that will never, ever, ever dissipate or go away in any way whatsoever. You've got to fight this system, but you have to fight it in a smart, intelligent way. And the way you do that is do the homework in every aspect. As people of color, we don't have the luxury of slacking off on anything. We don't have the luxury of drugs. It kills us, literally, in every way possible. 50 years. The reason I'm talking like this, because last year in January, my uncle passed. He was 93. And I'm sitting on the front row of the funeral with his 3 children and my other cousins. There's 5 of us. We all grew up together. And it dawned on me, we're the old people now. 69 years old. And people are looking at us. And they're saying, okay, what about it, old young fella? Yeah. And I'm looking at you all and saying, be concrete. The challenge is to be specific. The challenge is to be resilient. The challenge is to graduate and to go from there. I am so proud of you all. I can't even tell you how proud I am. When I see you, when I see a Steph Curry, and I see, it is not just that. When you come from where we came from, to see us, it's overwhelming. You have to keep doing that. Because who knows where it's going to be 50 years from now. Because I can tell you right now, I don't think that Rusty or Derry or Luster, any of us could tell you that we thought we'd be here at this spot 50 years from now. No way. I couldn't even dream of it. So now, where can we go? The possibilities are endless. They're endless for you. They're endless. But nobody can do it but you. I will leave you with this. In the 90s, the Navy had a program, actually the whole military had a program called Bottom Blow. We had too many officers, we had too many senior people. And my mother was sick and I was off for about a month. And so I came back and to my department, I was on a carrier, and I had about, I don't know, there was maybe 200 or 300 guys there. They were deck people. And so my division officer called everybody together that morning and put them all at parade rest. And we said whatever we was going to say. And as a department head, I'm standing to the side, and he dismissed everyone. It was my first day back. And everybody dispersed except a handful of young black brothers, our ages, 18, 19, 20 years old. And I couldn't understand why they were still standing there. And they came up to me and they said, "Sir, are you leaving too?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, are you leaving too? I said, I don't know what you're talking. He said, they've gotten rid of all of the other black officers. Are you leaving too? And I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. And there was one young brother that said, you all we got. "800 people on a ship, and you've all we got." It had never dawned on me. I just want you all to know, whether you're white or you're black or whatever, if you're Davis, you all some people got. Never forget that. That's the challenge.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Thank you for being all we've got too. I appreciate you.
Oh.
Now it's time for the audience. If you have questions, you can come up and ask your questions. Uh-oh. The mic. Don't turn it on. The mic is over here.
Here. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? All right. All of y'all, excellent. Excellent. You represented Davidson very well. Excellent. What I wanted to do for the rest of us who are here is to give you another perspective of the time at Davidson. When I came, I'm 81, Alvin Atkinson, it was about football. BSC had a competitor. It was the football team. That football team provided the social network. It connected Virgil, Stone, Hooks, all of Kennebrew, just calling out folks. We were football, and as Sterling was saying, he was sort of isolated with basketball, being in that space. How many girls played football? None. It wasn't about that. When Janet and some of those younger girls came, they talk about, you thought it was because you could cook? Oh no, it was cooking, but it was we needed to have that balance. So we had if the BSC had 30, 40 members, about 25 of them were football players. It was funny. I know, and at that time, we did win some games. Not like you're doing now, though, and the football players are here now winning. I know. But back then, it was still different. And so, as Sterling and others have said, it really kept us from fully being seen for who we were. We were that football player. I was a running back. It wasn't until post-Davidson that I had a chance to go into who I am and what I am. It started at Davidson, and so I always valued that. I saw they had the article about Old South. 81 was when I wrote that, but I didn't know I was doing. I did it because there was I was the president of BSC, but there was a nice young lady who was the vice president, Terry Knox Ramsell, who encouraged me. Because there's a song that says, "Put a woman in charge." Hey. That's what President Carol Quillen did. She came here and did great things, and it set the bar. I thought I was asking a question and all, but I ain't asking a question. I just wanted to give the football players like Stone and others, because that was our BSC. In fact, Erwin Carter, who was right here in class 79, when he was the BSC president, who's going to come in and fill the shoes? I did, and I was a junior. Because I felt that there was more and there was something there. And I'll just thank Erwin for stepping in, Vince Parker, who was my follower, my classmate, and then Herb Stone. Football players also are students, and they have the Davidson experience, and we all have it. And I just think because of that, society would be better. Damn, why you looking at me like that?
Thank you so much. Do we have another question?
So my name is Kellen. What'd you say?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. My name is Kellen West. I'm the SGA representative on the BSC board right now. And something I heard y'all continuously talk about was just like how like the BSC served as like a refuge almost for every generation. And but like in my time here, I'm a sophomore, like coming in. One of the reasons I even joined the board was because I felt like it wasn't that way. Like I felt like there was almost like a lack of like unity among the black community here. And I guess my question is like, how do we get back to that? And honestly, I've heard a lot of perspectives. I've heard people blame COVID. I've heard y'all talk about how there's a lot of, I guess, outlets now. But I would like to see the BSC be the same refuge for our community that it was for y'all. So yeah, I just want to know like, what do you guys think are steps or I guess ways that y'all made it a refuge that we could incorporate in how we run the BSC in the future?
Please, Sterling, because I told you last night I was going to refer to you on everything.
Just really quickly, it is a truth that there are many more outlets now than they were then. But I think the thing we have to remember is that we're a multidimensional people. So we can do more than one thing at one time. And when we get these opportunities, the black fraternities and sororities and other affinity groups and that sort of thing, it does not mean that we have to give all of our energy to that one thing. We have to remember that we're having a whole experience here. So sometimes those things just kind of naturally and organically happen to say, oh, now I'm down with this group. But it does not have to be that way. So what you have to do is we just have to think about how is it that, you know, all of the interest that we hold, all of the complexity that we carry here on this campus, how do we figure out ways to bring those things together? There is no rule that says as we get more opportunities to fully be ourselves, then somehow we have to divide ourselves. So I think what and I'll finish with this, what that means is that we have to make sure we're not operating out of a mentality of scarcity, but we must operate out of a mentality of abundance. That is to say, many of the opportunities that you get now, you should already have them anyway.
And my thought is that the BSC house will meet the needs of the students based on the needs of the students. And so the needs of Wendell's class and my class and the classes after us were different. So you guys are gonna have to figure out what needs you have and how it can satisfy those needs currently and help you become the best student that you can be in this environment now versus trying to model what we did, because all of our experiences were very different in that one space.
I'll echo Dana's sentiment and say that it's important to know that refuge looks different at different, I guess, points in time throughout history, right? And so figuring out what refuge looks like for you all, and at the same time recognizing that just looking at college as a whole, there are going to be commonalities in the experiences that people have. So a thought that comes to mind for me, and you know, I think it can resonate with all of us, is the fact that, you know, coming to Davidson as a freshman, navigating Davidson different class years, and maybe organizing subgroups around that, different programming, bringing people in, and the commonalities that they still share, even though they may be dispersed and going out to different organizations. It's something that I think, when I think about my time at Davidson, happened organically in some ways when you think about other organizations like Stride and other organizations, different affinity groups, but I think to make a concrete effort to pull people back together across those commonalities is one way that that space can then, I guess, as you're saying, go back to that notion of being a refuge for what the students need now. The needs of the students now are very different than the needs of the students across the different years. So you got to figure that out.
And I would say, from my perspective as someone who graduated in 2017, I got the little mic right here.
David. Technology.
I would say there are ways in which you kind of understand what the new gap is. Because in every generation and every time period, there's a gap. And you need to figure out what the new void is. So you can do that and find that in many different ways, but it's going to be harder if you feel like people are spread up across campus. I mean, I think you could do a big sister, little brother program in which you mentor people up as soon as they come here. I think making sure that the BSC is a space where people understand that they can come into. And I know now that, like, the BSC also used to be a place where people could cook, where people could find extra groceries, but now we have a space on campus for that. And just because we have a space on campus for that doesn't mean that there's not still a need. And so understanding that, like, the BSC is filling voids, but you just need to figure out what those voids are. And sometimes people are going to be a little bit quieter about those because they feel like there are other opportunities to get them. And making sure that Black people are the people that people are leaning on in the moment where they feel like they're voiceless, in the moment where they feel like they're silenced, is a way in which you can figure that out, especially in an age of social media and everything is running around and people feel like their lives are on full display. You're going to have to tap into people in a more organic and a more private way than you had to do before. And so I think we have time for one more question. And
Wait, can I add really quickly?
yes, go ahead.
So on Tuesday, I believe, the Black Student Coalition and the Black Femmes, we have a Black Femmes group on campus to celebrate Black women, to kind of bring unity between them. We had an event on Tuesday to kind of just talk about our experience on campus. And one thing that one of our members said was that, like, now as a Black person on campus, it's like, as much, we don't really see each other anymore. Like, people were saying when they came here, like, you know, we saw a Black person, you nodded them, you knew them. Like, the way that y'all are talking about how you know the Black people, it's like you knew everybody and it was a community, but people are saying how, like, you walk on campus now, you see a Black person, but, like, you just, you know, you mind your business, you keep pushing. And that's something that's so new and something that's kind of getting lost. And I think moments like that, just like you said, creating organic moments, like reaching out to them as soon as they get here, making them feel included. And as you get older, it's your responsibility to reach out to the younger generation, because otherwise, you know, I'm not gonna expect the first year to come talk to me as a senior. That's crazy. I think really creating that home for them as soon as they touch down is the best thing you can do. As soon as, like, they get here, just kind of talk to them, open house, personalized emails, just so that they feel like it's a community as soon as they get here, even before they get here.
Okay. Well, before you answer, let me just to the young. No, I don't want you to ask the question yet. I already know, Derry. I want to answer the young man now just for a second. Just like all of us here, there will come a time that's going to be a crisis, and you're going to have a BSC. It's coming. We just had more of them. Okay. And you will embrace the BSC and every other thing that you can get your hands on for your sanity, okay? So don't worry about that. You just keep being the student. Your time will come, okay?
Unfortunately.
All right?
Yes.
I'm Derry Harper, class of '76, with this young man at the other end. By the way, Lingle Manor may have been, that was the name of it, haunted. I just remember it was our place to go. My question is, there is a fierce debate going on in our country right now that basically is whether anything should be said about Black equity, inclusion. Just read about what's going on in Florida. What is the BSC doing to answer that seminal question? Are you encouraging white students, students of other races to be engaged? But more importantly, are you actively trying to deal with that? Because one of the advantages of being at this special place is that we don't mind talking and debating about anything. That's not the case on college campuses, especially public institutions, where diversity is being, well, let's just say it's a bad word, all right? So that's what I want to know. What are you doing now? What are you going to do in the future? What was your experience with that while you were there? I know everybody wants to take a break.
So they're already on it. They made that beat come
By
back.
the way, I use Google to find out what lingo man.
You got it.
I'll go ahead.
Carol at the
So, the BSC as an organization, we haven't made initiatives, but the members, again, the members of the BSC are active in this organization. They're doing so many things as part of MPHCs, on Honor Council, on SIAD. So Personally, what I can say I've done is I serve on the Student Initiative for Academic Diversity. And what we do is that when we have tenure track candidates, we interview them on their ability to, observe and advise a diverse student population. So we ask them about either experiences working with diversity and how they can apply that to the classroom, because when you get tenure, you're not here for 5, 10 years, you're for 30 plus years serving at an institution, coming across various amount of students. So that's one of the things that we do here as well. And then also there's the Honor Council. Honor Council, I'm one of the defense advisors. So basically anytime any student has any infraction with the Honor Council, any type of violation or accusation, I work with them to defend them going against the council itself. So with that, it's really important that we look at their situations as a whole and not just the violation or accusation, but kind of painting that picture using their identities that can be a factor in why something might have happened. And also in terms of academics and like diversity in course, Dr. Barsoom, who is the only black professor in the biology department, is an amazing professor, and he has a course this semester that Trey and I are also on the e-board. We're taking his class this semester. It's called Anti-Racist Medicine and Physiology. So Dr. Barsoom has been so prominent since he's been here. He was at Johnson C. Smith first, and then he came over here, and he has been so prominent in incorporating the anti-racist and just anti-racist mentalities in his classes. So I say there's a lot of work going on in faculty. I know Dr. E. Woodsey in sociology is also doing a lot. He actually has students from Johnson C. Smith come to Davidson and take classes together as a joint class. So I would say that students work with professors individually. It's not so much as a BSC, but just the black population, we're kind of on our own path, but we still work together to get these things done. So it's definitely still happening.
It's good to hear. So I want to thank everyone for coming today, and I also want us to give another round of applause to the panelists today. Please understand that these are just the beginning of conversations that we will have this weekend. Please reach out, continue to have these conversations, continue to broach these topics, because I think that they're important, and I think that they shouldn't be had in silos, but we should have them as community members here on this campus and then also off this campus as well. I really appreciate everyone for taking the time to listen to us today, be with us, and be in community. Now I have a list of announcements, so just let me run through this little list, and then we will be on our merry way. My first announcement is we have a group photo scheduled outside. So all your beautiful black faces, we're gonna go outside of the Union, down these stairs to the right, hook a right, and we're gonna go out in that little atrium area to take a photo of all of us today. Then after the photo, we're gonna head to the 4th floor of this building, so come back in. You can take the elevator up, or if you wanna get your exercise in, you go to the 4th floor, and there's box lunches, and you're encouraged to take a box lunch, sit with someone, talk, engage in more conversation. And then throughout the afternoon, we do have a variety of different scheduling that goes on. For any NPHC members, there will be a group picture at the NPHC plots at 2:45. Please take the time to explore the atrium as well as the plots. There are golf carts around campus for anyone who needs to be taken around campus and golfed around. There are drivers for you. And find any staff member if you need those. And then for dinner tonight, all past presidents are asked to arrive to the Lilly Gallery by 6:40 for another president's picture, past president's picture. And now I just want to ask everyone to I know I said a lot of things. You can find these on the website too. If you Google Davidson Black Alumni Weekend, click it. And then once you go down, you can scroll. And then it's going to say events of this weekend. They will tell you the events, everything that I just wrote out, told you. Also, there are lovely people around here who could also tell you the same things. But we're going to now take our picture, and I just appreciate everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.